Hi, and welcome to Beyond the First Response. It's Christy Lister here with my co-host,
Ciara Madrid.
And we have another amazing special guest, Harry Fagel, retired captain of the Nevada or Las Vegas Police Department, Metropolitan Police
Las
Department.
Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, yeah.
I'm like, I better get that part in there because I don't know if there's two out there.
Las Vegas Police covers it probably. I mean, there's a couple little departments, but Metro is the easiest way to refer it to.
Yes. Well, thank you for coming on. We're excited to have you. You're a wealth of knowledge and you've got some fantastic tools for coping that I understand.
Yeah.
Would you like to formally introduce yourself and let us know how long you were on at the department?
Sure. All right. My name is Harry Fagel, and I'm a Las Vegas native. Mostly, I was a little boy when I moved here, 6 weeks old. So I figure I'm mostly a native, right? I didn't have much choice in the matter. I've been in Vegas my whole life. Went to the entire school system here, all the way through college level. Joined the police department back in 1994. Started out as a street cop and did everything I could on that job to learn as much as I could. Ended up promoting to the rank of captain by the time I left, and had a wealth of experiences throughout my career. It was I would call it a remarkable career, honestly. I worked for some incredible leaders, and I worked for some not so incredible leaders, but I had some really great people around me, and I could be more thankful for everything I learned. But it wasn't always easy, and there's a price to pay for that job. And being aware of that more going into it, I think I'm hoping younger people that are learning now, because we don't keep it so quiet as we used to, that they're understanding that there's a price to pay for the service when you stand in other people's trauma and grief every day. And it's the same price, I'm sure, in a different way that doctors and nurses pay, and that firemen and EMTs pay as well. And it's pretty much overlooked. Those people that join those professions, I think a lot of times understand as well. They're the people that have the grit, but they don't. These people, like everybody else. So they maybe they have a little more. I always say you got to have a certain screw loose to be a cop.
That's so true.
You have to. and I think I do. And it's that ability to run towards harm. And not everybody that's on the police has that ability, but a lot of people do. And you can see enough times when it doesn't happen, it certainly strikes your heart when you see police not respond or not do what you expect of them. It's really hard for me, and it's hard for, I'm sure, a lot of citizens when you see that happen. But ultimately, no matter where you hire your police from, you're hiring from the human race. So you're going to get human condition stuff, and you're going to get human response. And they don't build us at Disney like people think. They don't build us out of robotics. We have hearts and souls and minds just like everybody. So it's a fascinating career. It was, and anything in the first responder world to me is something I had to do. It was something that I wanted to help people, and I had the screw loose. So it brought me into the police business.
Fantastic. I know Ciara's sitting there laughing. She's like, "Oh, yeah."
Let me throw a caveat too. I've been writing poetry my whole life too. So I've been a poet since I was 6. I was a cop since I was 25. I'm still a poet. I'm retired now from the police, but I still write poetry. So that's something I mentioned because anyone that's in any kind of first responder job, anybody that's standing in the pain of other people, they should do much to maximize their releases that aren't alcohol, that aren't drug use, that aren't sexual, de-inhibition, or whatever the crazy risks that people take in order to cope. That's fine. All those things are they have a place, but I think that when you find what compels you, what you're passionate about, you should follow that, even if it's in some type of symbiotic difference with whatever it is you do. Like, people are like, you're a poet and a cop. Yeah, I'm a human, capable of doing anything and everything. And poetry helps me deal with that job. It helped me a lot. It helped me cope with some of the pain that I felt emphatically. It helped me deal with a lot of the, I don't know, some of the more difficult calls that I went on. I was able to filter through my art, right? So I encourage people that are in these jobs to explore the creative side of themselves, to find that which gives them, I guess it's kind of like a meditative place. Most people that have a talent of some sort, whether it's crocheting, whether it's painting or photography, whether it's woodworking, whether it's metal work, whatever it is that you do that takes your hand and your mind together and separates you from the inner thoughts and all your thought bubbles. That's really important. So my first word of advice, if I'm giving advice, is that if you're going to be in the job that involves trauma, you need to take care of yourself and find your creative outlets.
And what a beautiful way to do that, because poetry, I mean, it's taking your thoughts and putting them through your hands. So it's releasing and processing, much like journaling,
Yes,
except
it
it's a
does. Yeah.
story you're willing to share through your words.
And and I think poetry is meant to be read aloud, so I read it aloud, I perform it. I'm a bit of a performance artist, and I do that, and I've been doing it for many years, and there's a poetry scene in Las Vegas, and I've traveled outside of it to other places when I was competing in that world. This is a long time ago. Now I write, and I know that when I perform poetry for certain traumatic events, it's helped people. I wrote a route poem for the Route 91 incident that happened there, the tragedy, and I knew that poem was important. I knew it was important to me because I went there that night and dealt with that in my own way. But it was also important for other people, survivors that had been through that experience. They heard that and it made them feel like they were less alone. And that survivor guilt that all of us feel when something like that happens, it was able to help compartmentalize and realize, hey, none of us had a control lever on this. It happened. And the reaction and response was as it should be to sustain life. And people did, and they came forward, and they were everyday heroes, whatever you want to call it. People took care of it. And that's just one of many incidents, but that one sticks out of my mind because it was one of the few times that I was super adamant about the poetry side, like the department. I went to them and said, I'm doing this poem. And they're like, well, we'll see it. I'm like, no, you guys got to help me with this. I'm doing this. This is important. And I knew it was important. So I pushed it and it got out there to the world. I'm glad it did, because I knew it mattered to people. And all I wanted to do was help. I don't know how else to help at that point, you know?
And I think like I haven't personally read it. Uh October 1 means a lot to me, just on a really emotional level. Because as you may know, is that was Matt's final demon. Like that was the one that he stopped doing all the things he loved because he kept going back to that night. And but the way you released it, like that's amazing. And that you fought, like, and Christy tells me, like, when I when I tag police departments or I tag the governor, like that takes balls. Like that took balls for you to go, no, I'm doing this, because you weren't just recognizing the survivors too, but you were recognizing every first responder that was out there that had
Yes.
that trauma of that night too. And I mean, I know there's stories within the department, as you do too, of what all you guys went through that night, just the aftermath, not just the actual, what actually happened, but the aftermath, and having to do it, for hours upon hours upon hours. I think that's amazing. And I think I need to read it, but I think I need to like like
You don't need
take
to read it. If I would suggest, just go on Google and just type the route Harry Fagel in my name.
I
You'll
just
get the
did.
departments. Yeah, if you look at the departments, they did a production of it from, I think it was at the when I read it at the Valor ceremony or something. But anyway, they put some nice video with it, and it's a pretty cool, like, for as horrible as it is, they did a nice thing with it. They tried to make it more like, I don't know, user friendly for everybody, because poetry is always intimidating for some reason to people because they think, oh, art thou fine woman that stood on the caves, they think it's that. It's not. If you want to know the temperature of a society, read the poetry from the time that you're thinking about, and you'll see what the temperature is. And
And
you can
it's
see right now what the temperature is. It's on fire.
it's interesting that you say that, because it is, when you're reading somebody else's words, you're afraid to feel them. And that's why people tend to read or interpret poetry sometimes in that form, like, where I can't read this. But when you really feel it, it takes you to a whole different place that maybe you didn't even know you had inside, that has been hiding there trying to come out.
I encourage people to read poetry out loud. I really do. If
Yeah.
they're going to read it out loud. It was always in the beginning, we spoke our words to each other. We tried to remember them, and we passed along stories that way, because we've always passed along stories, right? Everything's a story. So at this point in my life, I feel like I want to know more people's stories, and I want to tell more people my story. So we're sharing these narratives, and we're learning from each other, because I don't think we really know much. I think we learn, but everything we seem to think we know, we end up finding out we're wrong. about what we know. So it's better just to not know. I know
Right.
that sounds crazy. It sounds counterintuitive, but the more I learn, the less I know. And I know
I
that
don't
sounds like
know.
a weird.
It does sound that way, doesn't it? But I don't think
Yeah.
it's that. I think you're just gaining more knowledge and overcoming what you misunderstood, what you thought was the
You're
truth of
learning.
that. Yeah. And learning
It's
You're
every
learning.
growth.
day is the best way
And
to
if you
go.
open your mind, if you open your mind to the world, especially to the kids, because they're unsullied by our biases. They have their own, but they're unsullied by ours in their heads when they're young. They're seeing the world through a different filter, you know. And if you listen to them, you can learn a tremendous amount. Young people have a lot to say, you know, and they want to be heard. And sometimes they're so far from the truth. I get it, but whose truth, you
Right.
know?
Right.
So I know I'm digressing. I'm a philosopher too. That I
That's
think
a
that if I've chosen a path in my life, it's to be a philosopher and a poet now. And priorly, I to be a warrior and serve the community and to stand in the way of harm was part of my life. But I think the most important part of my life now is to help people still, but in a different way, without the violence.
agreed. It's helping them process and it's teaching others that maybe have grown up in families or first responder families that just don't talk. It's
Oh, I
teaching
know
them
there's
and
so
it's
many.
okay to talk. I know we've done that to our kids. I mean, it's a conversation I have over and over. What Ken and I had done wrong was teach our kids that we love them and we're there for them and that's all they need to know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and you know, it's. I wish people would take a moment sometimes to realize just how beautiful they are, man.
Yeah,
If they could love themselves a little bit instead of loving things, instead of worrying about this and that, and just take a moment to be alive, just to
right.
be alive and understand that's the whole point. It doesn't matter what your belief, your faith, none of that matters when it comes down to the simple matter of your heart beating in your chest. Go outside, look at the sunshine for a second, let it hit your face, look at the trees. Hopefully, you got some somewhere, or the cactus, or the grass, or something that's growing, and realize you're part of all of that. And do that once in a while, and you'd be surprised. You start to care more about for yourself. And when I say care about yourself, it's not a selfish thing I'm talking
No.
about. When you care more about your humanity, you care about other people's as well. And the more that you do that, the more you realize that if we help each other, we can do anything.
Yes.
When we obstruct each other, we fail often, and often to our own chagrin. We scratch our heads. I don't know why we try the same shit, repeat it over and over again, and it doesn't. You know, what is that? The definition of insanity, right? It's doing the same thing, expecting different results.
Yep.
But the truth is, a lot of people don't even know a different way. They never even thought of it. They never look inward and say, "Hey, let me try something else." It's hard to
I
do.
don't even think they
Oh
have,
yeah.
I don't think they even realize that they are doing the same thing over and over again.
I would agree, and
Right.
and you know, it's hard sometimes when you're in it looking. So this is ultimately is going to bring me to what I believe about therapy. Okay, because it saved my life. There's no doubt whatsoever in me. And I was not a true believer in any of that at first. Okay. I was a big skeptic. I still am a skeptic to some degree, and I'll tell you why in a second. But when I was getting divorced from my first wife, um, I got turned on to a therapist to help us with this marriage situation. Mostly, he was there to help us with the divorce itself because we were already going to be divorced and we knew it. We didn't have any children. It was one of those young decisions, and it was pretty palatable, but it was still a painful time. And we, as part of the, I don't know, the stereotypical, this is what you do when you're having problems, you go talk to a counselor, right? So we did. And I got really fortunate because I've had kind of a negative feel from the world of therapists before when I was younger. And I kind of was, and they aren't, they're nothing special. But this guy, he was something special. And I ended up having a long relationship with him and learning how therapy, it's not, I, it is so not what people think it is. It is not, they don't do shit for you. You have to do it for yourself. And the thing about it is that when you learn these tools, they don't work for themselves. You have to make the effort, and it is hard work, like
Yep.
everything else that's valuable in this world, right? You have to work for it. It doesn't mean much, but it is so worth working for it. And I didn't realize it. And I tell you, I band-aided myself throughout my career. I band-aided myself. I did not do therapy. I just band-aided. I would go. So I digress for a moment. The therapist that I had, his name was James Chalker. He was a fantastic guy. He got face cancer, literally. And he called me and said, Harry, I'm dying. I'm going to die probably within a month. I'd like you to write my eulogy. I know you write a lot of eulogies. I want you to write it, and I want you to perform it at my wake while I'm still alive. He had a living wake. And I said, I go, yeah, absolutely. He goes, well, you have to understand something. You're exposing yourself now. You're going to expose the fact that you're in therapy. And I was like, I don't care. And I went to this thing and I went to this wake and I read this poem for this man. And there were some famous people there. I won't ever mention who, but I was surprised that who was there. There was this group, this incredibly large group of people that he had touched in some way. And when he died, I was afraid. I was like, am I going to be able to find another therapist? What am I going to do?
Right.
I did find another. And I would say to anyone out there who's going to get into this and try to deal with the angst of this world and this work, and if they're going to try to deal with anything, that they shop around and take their time and find someone they connect with. And if you don't connect with the therapist, then don't go to it. Find another one. So I found Lourdes. Lourdes is when I say lifesaver. So I don't know. James was definitely the catalyst, but then Lourdes was there with me when I really started to feel the job. As I moved on, as I took on more responsibilities, I moved up in rank, and I wasn't so much of this immediate danger that I used to be in. But now the people that worked for me were in the immediate danger that I used to be in, and the responsibility load just kept increasing.
Yeah,
It
you were
wasn't
going to
until
say something.
Go ahead.
Me. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was saying, I
Sorry.
wanted to say that, no, I'm 100% agree with you, because you can go to any therapist in the world, but if you do not mesh with them, you're not also going to do the work to continue to get healthy. Like, it's a multi-step process when you go to therapy. It's not just, oh, I showed up and paid the bill. It's so much more than that.
It's unfortunate because I think a lot more first responders would seek therapy if it was easier.
Yeah. Well,
I
yeah.
think a lot more people would play the guitar too if it was easier.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
It requires practice, and nobody likes to practice. Practice sucks because it's
Yeah.
not fun. It's work. It's maintenance. It's over and over. It's repetitive, and it's. But I'm going to tell you something, and I'm telling you both this. I don't know you very well, Ciara. I knew Matt. I love Matt very much. Okay, I would consider him one of my friends and colleagues, and a man who has reached out to me before for advice, and I've reached out to him the same way. And I was very, very sad to learn what happened. But this is something that is it's driving me. That's why I'm here today, probably because of Matt and other men like Matt and women like Matt who I've known over my career who have made that choice. And it breaks me every time that happens. It breaks me a little bit. And I'm always like, where you just hold on for a minute there, calm down and realize there are resources and they're not a joke. They're not slapped together resources. They're not resources where, this is just somebody trying to get a promotion somewhere and created some program. This is old stuff that has been proven for years and years to work. Post-traumatic stress disorder and complex post-traumatic stress disorder are highly treatable.
Yes.
Highly. Depression's a little harder, okay? But it's still in part and parcel. I can tell you that the tools that I learned, and especially when I retired, and I'll explain that in a second, during my career, when I said I was band-aiding, I was. When things would get to the whistle-blowing point, like the tea kettle was going to start whistling, that's when I'd make an appointment. So I was just like in free fall all the time. And then I would just put on the brakes for a minute. And then what it was, it wasn't very effective, but it was all I could muster because I was so busy with my responsibilities. It is hard work, like I said. I think that if you started it earlier and you started it from the beginning, it would be a lot easier because you could integrate it. It was never integrated for me. And I paid for my own therapy for many years. I still do. And I was very paranoid about the department knowing my business. And I know that sounds weird, but I know a lot of guys feel that way. And a lot of people feel that way in our business that, if I say something and they're going to know. And I don't want them to know. It's none of their business. And so their business I even seeing a therapist. And why I've come out publicly with it is because I'm sick of my friends committing suicide. So I just want to tell them, hey, man, there is a way to do this. It's hard work, but you can do it. And I know the one thing I know about the people I work with in that business and the police business is that they're hardworking people. They can take it. Yeah, everybody gets lazy once in a while. I get that. But when they have a task to do, they get it done. And if they would make the task their mental health, they get it done.
Yes.
And if they would make the task their peace of mind, they would get it done. But they don't because they got to be stoic and rush around with that tough guy bullshit.
You know what I'm hearing, Harry? The fact that you were as a leader retired out as a leader, but you are willing to do it, and when it's coming up and you are talking about it, even the leaders, the captains, the chiefs, the majors, whatever your upper team is, it gives them the opportunity to say, hey, maybe we need to do this too, and they see the benefits
Yeah,
of it.
absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, the people who take on these responsibilities oftentimes are suffering at a level that people have no idea. They're drinking from a fire hose every day, and they are they're in a competitive world a lot of times. Everybody's worried about what everybody else is thinking, and depending on the type of leadership in the organization, it can be really stressful, man. I mean, bad stress. There's leadership philosophies out there that actually create stress, and I don't agree with those philosophies, but they're definitely in a lot of police departments. It's fear of the process shit. Like I want the people here that I want them afraid to pull the trigger if they need to. No, I don't want to have to hurt anybody. I never did, but sometimes you have to hurt people in our business. It's unfortunate. You don't want to crack somebody's chest either, but sometimes you have to as a doctor. As horrible as you know, your chances of them living are so small. But I've seen it happen, and they go for it, man. But I know later on when they're home, they don't think about it, but it's in the back of their mind. They lost that person.
Yeah.
I'm sure of it. And
Yeah,
nurses too.
yeah, because like Christy and I've talked about like and you could probably attest, there's the one case that changed you, and then there's the one case that broke you. And all of them have it. Like I'm very vocal about, I don't know the one that changed Matt. I wasn't with him at that time. I mean, we had lots of stories. He told me lots of stories of lots of instances. And but I think the one that finally was the breaking back was like October 1. But then there's like, and it's part of the suicide, it's part of the suicide survivor guilt. Like, okay, well, was it this one? Did I just not listen well enough on this one? Was it this one? Like, which one was it? And I think one of like the biggest gut punches of being the survivor, and Brianne, his daughter, and I, we were together when we found it, is just like 2.5 years before Matt died, he went through a whole suicide saving class, like to stop somebody from dying by suicide.
Safe talk.
Yes. And he had like certificate after certificate. And we're both looking at each other and we're like, what the F? Like, seriously? Like, he could do this, but he couldn't do it for himself. And that's like that whole mindset that we're adamant to change. Like, you can do it for yourself. Like, you can do it for Joe,
How do you
Steve.
love? How do you love yourself when
Exactly.
nobody else does?
Yeah. Yeah.
In
And
your mind, that if you're there with that, if you're thinking that way, if you're thinking that, this is the whole world against me, or any of those thoughts, and those do happen for all of us. But I'm going to tell you something that might ease your mind a little bit about this catalyst thing that you're talking about. I don't know that it's a catalyst, to be honest with you. I think that it's the layering. It's layer after layer after layer. I don't know that there's one thing. I think a lot of people stop themselves for years from doing anything final. Okay.
Oh,
They
absolutely.
say, I'm just going to give it another week. I'm going to give it another month. I'm going to give it another year, whatever the hell it is. I don't know. I just know that I just want them to wait until they die from natural causes, or they're so old and they just want to go out that way. I get it. But a healthy human being ending their life is what I'm trying to stop.
Agreed.
And when I say
100%.
healthy, I mean, none of us are totally healthy, right? I guess. I don't know. I'm trying because I know I have to be a little nuanced. I don't want to try to paint broad strokes on something that for each person is very personal and very definitive for them. I can't be in that space. I cannot know what their heart is at. I don't know what their pain level is, obviously, okay? Because I'm not suffering there, whatever it is they're suffering. I just know that I've suffered a lot and that I've felt some dark shit, in the times that I've suffered. There's been times when I felt completely like it was out of control. And that, believe me, outwardly, I did not appear that way. I still took care of business. I still did what I needed to do. I still managed my duty, because duty is a real easy hierarchy to be in. It is. You know what you got to do, and you can pour as much time as you want into it. So you can avoid everything else and just do your duty. Okay. And
It's a task that you're able to complete without
duty
thinking.
is not duty; it's duty.
So whichever duty you're doing, you can get it done.
You can get it done, but what you're not doing when you're doing all that is dealing with the real issue.
Right.
And the thing about it is that I have stood in places just like everyone else where you just like, you cannot believe you're standing there and the things that are going on around you. And you have to parse it out right because you are being relied upon in those moments to be the voice of sanity, to be the voice of reason, to stand in the way of harm, to do all the things that you're paid to do, right? And to be a good human being too, and to do the right thing, all on that. And to follow the policies and procedures and laws, both of the state and of the county and the country, and to do the policy. You know, everything is so complicated. So the fact that you wouldn't want to love yourself a little bit, take care of yourself a little bit is just incredible to me. But I know I didn't. I didn't take care of myself. And when I retired from the police department, I was drinking a lot, man. I was drinking a lot. And I'm a binge drinker. I wasn't a daily drinker or anything, but I could tell it was ruining my happiness. You know? And my wife and I talked, and she said, listen, you've done therapy, but you need to fix this shit, dude. You have got to get into this and just pay the money and go into therapy and do it for real.
Yeah.
And it was more of an ultimatum than that. I'm not going to get into how it went down. But the truth is, my wife was absolutely right. I needed to do intense therapy. I needed to just bite the bullet, and I did. And a lot of the things that I had, all the layers of trauma that I'd done, remember, I've been doing therapy this whole time too. So it wasn't so hard to pick up on what I needed to do. Then I started to do it. Then I started to go and take care of stuff. I walked into the police job with complex PTSD before I even started from my childhood.
Most people
And
do.
now, yeah, and I think a lot do.
Yeah.
And talking to fellows, and it's what makes that screw loose.
Yes.
That you're able to deal with this because you've been protecting yourself and the other siblings you have or whatever for a long time. You're used to creating protection bubbles. Okay.
Yes.
So it's a natural progression to go into the police business in a lot of ways, I think. At least that's my theory from what I've seen. And I don't know what the science is on it, but I do know that I think it was 39 police officers I worked with at Metro killed themselves. Something like that. And it's that number is just astronomical to me. I'm like, of all the ways to go.
Exactly. And that's one department. And how many years? One. Over how many years?
10, 20 year. That's a 20-year. And I don't believe that it's that number. I don't believe it's that low because I think that they're not counting the overdoses.
They don't.
And the other stuff that goes on, the alcohol deaths, related deaths, and the things that where you're not seeing the whole picture. You're not seeing the iceberg.
No.
You know? And I just, but for me, the thing about it is I'm not asking for special consideration. I'm not trying to, listen, I have something in me that makes me do the right thing and whatever it is. Okay. But I don't want to be that guy that's asking for something. I'm asking for people to do it for themselves. I'm not asking anybody to give it to them. Sometimes you got to spend money to do it. It's fine, but do it.
You're showing it can be done.
It can be done. And my life is, so after the intense therapy, I can tell you, I have never, ever, ever been in the place I'm in right now in my life. Ever have I ever been in a place that I feel like I do right now. I have never loved myself before this, probably within the last 6 months, I would say. And I have been working towards that goal this whole time, not realizing that that was the point in the first place. And when you say love yourself, it's not narcissistic. I don't know how else, it's like impossible to explain to people. I'm like, look, it will give you the greatest gift of empathy you will ever have for others when you love yourself. I don't know what else to tell you.
It's so true though, because it's hard. Yeah. It's hard to not think of it as a narcissistic or selfish act, but it should be a selfish act because if you can't love yourself, you can't truly love and give to other people.
And that sounds so like easy to hear, right? Oh, but it's so complex because you feel like you love other people because you're helping them. What you don't know is that your pain is showing.
Yes.
You think it's not, but people are feeling it in your life, especially those that are closest to you. I know that the families of law enforcement and of other, I'm going to stick with law enforcement because I know it. I can't speak for these other professions, but I don't wish to take from them. I know they suffer traumatic things, just as soldiers do. There's all kinds of professions where it is. All I'm saying is within those professions, people need to take care of themselves. And in the past, it was shunned. It was looked upon as, oh, you're too weak. You're weak if you're not doing it, in my opinion. You're not working out. You're not taking care of yourself. This needs to start from the academy forward. They need to understand that this is not a punishment. This is to help you have a successful career. And now they got to do 33 years. It's a long time to be in law enforcement. Yeah. Okay. I did 25 and I can barely stand it.
Yeah.
And I
And
loved my career. I just did, that was all I could take.
you said something like so like I don't even know the word to say it, but like you said something, it's more than just quitting drinking or going to the gym. It's more than that. There's so many levels that you have to, because, and I take from my experience, like Matt quit drinking and he was doing really, really, really good, but he wasn't doing the other work too on top of that. And then it was like, you really need to go to therapy, Matt. So then came back in the drinking, and then he was going to therapy, but then he wasn't doing the work in there. I mean, like, all the hindsight is he wasn't doing the work in therapy. He wasn't doing all the things that he should have done to help his mental health. But Matt had a deep rooted stigma. Like he was one of those like good old boys. Like his
I
thought
know.
process was like,
He
oh,
was a
I
tough
don't need
guy.
help. Yeah,
He
he
was
was
a
a tough
tough
guy.
cowboy, you know.
Yeah, I
I
don't
loved him
need
for that. I
help.
loved his tough guy shit. I loved it, but I also knew that it's, you got to
Yep.
get, you can wear your disguise, you can put on your game face if you have to, I guess, but you don't have to. You can
Yeah.
still be just as tough. I found out.
Oh
Not
yeah.
only that, you're tougher
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'll put up a boundary now on people I never would before. I used to be a
Oh,
people pleaser, and now I'm just like, hey, no. And if somebody hurts
absolutely.
me, I'm done with them. I'm like, don't bring pain to me. I'm not. I don't have to deal with that.
Right.
And the truth is, none of us do. If you look at
No.
other cultures, every culture wipes off on culture. It doesn't. There's no one culture in the world. There never will be, because as
Mm-mm.
soon as there's a different one, they rub off on each other. It's just culture's always changing, evolving, devolving, changing. Our culture in the police business has been a certain way for a long time. It needs to change. It absolutely has to, if we're going to move forward in the world, in a democratic world.
And I love
And
that you said that it all needs to start within the academy. So my boyfriend now, his cousin is going through a police academy in California, and they just got a new chief, and I sat and talked with him because he knows what I do, and like what that Matt was a police officer and what I do for first help, and that I speak out for mental health for our first responders. And he said they have like in their academy, and he said, and it extends out once they're on the streets, working no longer in the academy, they have an hour of their paid day that they work out to start that habit of, this is one way to take care of your overall health. And I'm like, that's amazing. Do you know how much that would change people's mindset? Because like, it's like I said, it's not just one thing, but when you already have the tools as a young cadet going in, like, imagine
the
how you
sky's the
more you
limit.
grow. Yeah, like you just continue to grow and learn and change the whole process across the board. And I mean, if one little department can do this, like, why aren't our big cities doing this? Why aren't we changing across the board? And that's why we have this podcast. That's why, I asked you to come on, because your insight as being a police officer and being a captain, like you were, there's people, obviously there's lots of police officers that will never become a captain, but you're a captain saying, I had a hard time, I have these traumas from the job, but I still would recommend you doing a police officer, but you need to go in and do it like this now. Like, we need the change within the country. And I think that we've said it before, Christy and I have talked about it before, like the younger generation, they are more apt to talk about their feelings. They're more apt to say,
You're right.
no, I'm hurting right now, this hurt my feelings, and that's really good. But if we have those deep rooted stigmas still within departments, those kids, and I'll say kids because they're younger and
They're
they're
young.
kids.
They're kids.
They're young compared to me, yes, for sure.
Yeah, but
They look like babies.
they'll kind of they'll adapt to fit the stigma. So the stigma is the whole part that needs to change, and that's why it's so important to, like, I cannot wait till we can like publish this podcast, because I'm going to start like tagging and going, hey, like, look, we had Harry Fagel on, and everyone needs to listen to this, because it is so important to recognize the mental health. It is just, and I love that you are open about it, and it's okay to not be okay.
It is
See,
okay to not be okay, but let me explain something about the stigma and what it comes from, and let me explain why it's so hard. Okay, in my opinion, anyway. Light duty officers. Okay, are there light duty officers that take advantage of light duty? What do you think?
Absolutely.
Therein lies the problem. Because what happens with administrators and with fellow peers is when they see somebody who's struggling, and now they're on light duty or they're doing some other job. They're no longer able to take a day off because this guy's or this gal's having an issue. They're no longer able to get a vacation day and now when they're out there on the street, it's a little less safe because this person's not there all the time. They're out there dealing with this issue. And sometimes these issues become so great that these people leave. They aren't even able to do this job that they normally did before. And those folks, I understand that they're having a really rough way. And what I'm trying to say to administrators is because you're doing therapy does not make you stop doing your job. It doesn't make you not do the work. The work's important work. And being strong when you're out there in the world is important to a degree. It is important to be a voice of reason. But I'm going to tell you something. When you're a human being with people out there, it's way better than not being one. At least for me, over and over and over again, it was my humanity that saved me. It was my humanity that got a confession from someone, not some tough guy shit. It was from fucking talking to a person like they're a real person. I learned I tried the Hollywood way. It doesn't work. Okay. It's what we learned from TV and the stereotypes about police. And listen, I was a detective for a long time and I was very immature when I first started doing that. But by the time I got done, I realized that it was the heart and the mind working together that got shit done. It was never this. It never gets anything done except for the shock troop that's going down the street and stopping the bad thing from happening in that moment. That's the one time when you need that. But the rest of the time you don't. When you go to somebody's tragic situation, I have stood over a dying person before and heard the guy had shot himself in the head with a very small caliber gun. He was still alive. And he had taken a suicide note and he had stuck it in the ground outside because he didn't want to make a mess. And he'd gone outside and he'd stuck a fork in this. And there's all of us around him and he's dying. This man is dying. And one of the cops there is like, he's going to die. He's dead. That's a dead dude. Just callous. And I'm like thinking, this is the problem. And I know it was a defense mechanism. I pulled him aside later and I talked to him about it. And I said, listen, that's the last thing that guy heard. Was that the last rites for that guy? You wanted to hear that, hey, Dick, you're dying? You think that was the right thing to say? And he's like, well, I go, listen, man, I know this is hard, but don't make it harder.
Yeah.
Because that comment is going to stick in your own head. You'll be surprised.
Yeah.
You'll be thinking about what you said to that guy. The gallows humor is great, but not in the presence of the citizens and the public. Because if you aren't human, how the hell do you expect them to trust you?
Right.
And I don't know how else to put it to people. I'm like, you don't get to be trusted just because you put a badge. I mean, you should be, right? I mean, that'd be a perfect world, but it ain't a perfect world. In fact, a lot of our people are afraid of the police. And there's a good reason to be afraid sometimes. And I never wanted to be that cop. I want people to fear me in the warfighter moment, yeah. But not when I'm just walking up to talk to them. I don't want them shitting their pants. Why is that happening? Well, I can tell you why. Because you take the human out of it. You can't trust those folks that are acting that way. I'm like, this is not just for the public. This is for ourselves. Take care of yourself and you will be kinder to people and you will have less complaints and you will still be safe and you will still be able to do whatever tactical thing you need to do to be safe. And if you have to put a hurt on somebody, God bless it, I understand. But even that, you're going to have a different mindset.
Yep.
I walk the world with kindness now. That's it. And I'm going to continue to walk the world with kindness as long as I can. I'm
glad that you say that. And it brings up a good point when you talk about that, because it's so much easier to do where, like Ciara talked about, a physical workout on 1 hour every shift. What about a mental workout 1 hour every week and intertwine that?
How about just having a place to relax if you go to a traumatic call? The fire department, the thing about them is, there's a lot less of them. Okay. There's a lot less fire. So they can pay a lot more money, I guess. They get a lot more resources available. But when they have a traumatic call, they go back to their barn and they hang out, rest for a little while, they kick back. And I understand they live in the place and that it makes a difference, but we need to change our entire paradigm of thinking on this and look at if we have, and I think Kevin McMahon as the sheriff of Metro has thought this through to a point where he's realized, hey, the more powerful your employee is, when I say powerful, I mean empowered, the more that they are going to do incredible work for you too. This is once again from the management side. It's like when you want to motivate people, they don't want their heads down, staring at the ground when they come in and thinking about all the bullshit they got to wade through just to get through the day. Because if that doesn't pile on stress, I don't know what does.
Oh yeah.
What they want to do is go to a place where they're like, they feel supported, you know? And I think that the administration needs to understand that this is not knuckle dragging stuff anymore. We don't live in that world anymore. This isn't caveman shit. It can be in certain moments, and we need to train for those moments and train enough that the muscle memory kicks in those moments. But we are not in a forward operating base in a foreign land where we go out and deal with some problem like that. We're in the community every day for years and years and years and years.
Right. And it's your community. It's where you live
100%.
too.
It should be
Like
your
it's,
community. You should
yeah.
treat it as such.
And we were
I always
talking,
took it personal.
yeah, because it's not like you said, it's not like being in a foreign land and you get to go and do this, but then you get to come home in the safety of home, where when you, and that's why, you know, back to the whole reference of that's why you become a police officer, because you want to protect your community, you want to serve your community. So, and I don't even know where I was going with that. Like my train of thought went out the door, but but
Those trains of thought.
yeah, they go like this sometimes. But
yeah.
it brings, but when it becomes your community and we change the mindset and how it's looked at, is it brings that humanity back, because these are your neighbors, this is your family, like, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
and I'm old Vegas. Like I told you, my cousin was LVMPD for many, many, many years, and our family had been in Vegas for since like 1915. So
1915 or 50?
yeah, 1915.
50.
One
Ooh,
five.
you got me
Like
beat, man.
my
My family's been here since the 50s.
when I told Matt like where my family grew up, he's like, oh my gosh, Ciara. And I told him, I'm like, my dad lived in these apartments, and he's like, you know how many murders happened in that apartment, Ciara? I'm like, no,
I
I
grew
was
up in
allowed to.
apartments where murders happen too.
Yeah, I was like, no, but maybe that's why I was never allowed to go to the playground by myself. Like, but like Matt said, like those were the communities that were always there. Like I grew up in, you know, like uh, Washington and Torrey Pines, Washington and Jones. Like that community
Right.
had always been there. And my whole family was in that area pretty much until my great grandparents passed away, the ones that brought our family to Vegas. And when Ricky was serving, like he I know he loved what he did, because that was home, and it was in the community that housed his entire family, you know, on both sides of our family. And I know like, and you know, like I know like once Ricky and Matt would get together, when we would see Ricky, like they would shoot the shit about, you know, this and this and this and this, and like Ricky would leave and Matt would go, man, it was really good to sit and talk to Ricky. And I'm like, yeah, you know, to me, I'm like, this is my cousin. Like, this is normal. Like, we talk like this, you know, it'd be Christmas time and we talk like this. But Ricky brought that sense of this is his community, this is his home when he served. And I know even, you know, when Matt died, he came to me and he goes, you know, Ciara, it just, he's not the only one, and change has to happen. I mean,
See, and we say this. Thank you for that. Change has to happen because change will happen no matter what. It's always happened. So if you are in a position where you can push that change a little bit, if you're an administrator, if you're a sheriff or you're a chief or you're a major in some department who's in charge of the human resources aspect, start thinking about this stuff. You don't want people committing suicide under your watch, okay? Because they're people and they're not weak. They're not weak people. That is a misnomer. That is bullshit. It makes me mad when I hear it. Listen, everything that involves anything that isn't the normal day-to-day getting up and doing business requires a little bit of courage. Everything requires a little bit of courage. Getting out of bed sometimes in the morning requires a little bit of courage.
absolutely.
Taking your own life requires a lot of courage. It requires a lot of courage to do that, to make that decision. And it's a painful, horrible decision. I wish people wouldn't make that decision, but I'm not them. I just know that we can reduce it. We can. We can by making these changes. I believe it. And if I say, well, how do you prove it? Well, we'll see suicide rates go down eventually, hopefully in our business. And ours isn't the only one. I got it, but this is the one I know about, the one I'm focused on.
Right.
And when it flabbergasts me that they just the tools are right there. They're right there. The tools are available.
But they don't want to spend the money on the tools because, you know, they just don't have money.
The stoicism.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to buy your F-150 with the bullet antenna on it. You can afford to go to therapy.
Right.
I'm serious. You know, all these toys, they don't mean shit if you're not here.
That's true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then your family is the ones that have to
Your
decide what to
family
do with that.
never here. If you're thinking about suicide, I'll tell you, one of my closest friends committed suicide. You've all both lost in your life, and I'll tell you something. I was a very callous man before that. I was much younger, and I was callous about my friend Tommy Mark. He was a saxophone player. He played saxophone for the Killers, actually. And went on world tour with them a couple times. They had a sax section when they were on tour to live shows. And he was a marvelous saxophone player, obviously. And me as a poet, we got together, we created an album, we did some stuff together. And this kid was just, I love his family. I've known his family since I spent 25, 30 years. So I'm doing these creative projects with this guy, and I never knew what he was going on in his head. And I wouldn't write poetry for suicide. That was a decision I made back then. I won't write a poem for suicide because the pain they cause. And then one of my best friends killed himself. I wrote him a poem, obviously, but I had to eat a lot of crow for it too in my heart. I realized I had kind of thought this whole thing. I realized that everybody's suffering to some degree. We just don't know, and that it isn't my job to save them, I don't feel a guilt about that. I don't think you should feel guilty because you don't see the signs, right?
Right.
Because we're excellent at lying to people, man. I mean, you can look right somebody's face and lie to them. There's no secret about that. Everybody thinks that there's some magic because they watch too much TV that they're gonna be able to spot when somebody's not telling them what's going on. But I can hide anything from you just like you can hide anything from me. And this is one of the most shameful secrets to carry. So you think people are going to share it with you?
Right.
Probably not unless they're really comfortable. And even then, they're afraid once they say something like that out loud that you'll never feel the same way about them again.
Oh yeah.
It's frightening.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to do. And what I would say that anyone listening is don't feel that you have to tell anyone. You don't. You accept your therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and you should tell them because they can help you.
Yes.
And if you really, I'm not telling you shouldn't tell somebody, you should, but if you feel like you can't, at least tell your therapist because they got tools for you. And the thing is, I've talked to so many guys who have been on the brink and told me about their brinks, and they're guys and gals that would surprise you who they are, but I would never give up their confidence.
Right.
But it has made me feel like this is a salient truth that it happens a lot, and that I just feel like I made it 55 years without doing it.
Keep going another 55.
I'd like to go as long as I can now. I have a place, and I've never had, like I said, when I'm telling you folks that I have never been here before, I'm not bullshitting you. I've never been in this space, and it took a lot of work, and I'm working on it still, and I still see my therapist once a month. I do. It's only once a month, and I don't have to do it, but I do because you think you don't have to. But if you don't tune it up once in a while, then you forget. You forget
Right.
some of the tools, the breathing exercises, shit like that. People don't understand. And I'm going to tell you if you could take one thing from today, from my advice, and this is something that I've learned, and it's taken me a lot of learning. I could go down the road of the therapy I've been through a million different ways, how the amygdala works, how the cerebral cortex works, why those things, you have these chemical reactions. All that's great. Take this with you. Your anxiety is lying to you.
Yes.
It lies to you. You lie to yourself. You make yourself more stressed out. You push the buttons within yourself to release these chemicals. So realize that no matter what, even though you feel like it's the truth, it ain't the truth. And in our business, in the police business, all we do is worst case scenario everything. It's called hypervigilance, right? We go out there and we're sitting in restaurants with our back to the wall, and we're watching, everybody's hand. I still do it. I can't help it.
You can't
help it. It's ingrained, but I'm trying to be less stressed about it. It's like, and I'm getting better at it. But I know everybody goes through that in this business. They do because you're told that basically everybody that's out there that can kill you will kill you.
Right.
So your amygdala is firing all the time. Do I need to worry about this threat, this threat, this threat? And what I'm here to tell you is that the threat comes from within. A lot of it.
Yes.
And you can mitigate that threat if you just do the fucking work.
It's like it's you are your own worst enemy. And I know
and your own best friend too.
Yeah, but it takes work to be your own best friend. And
you're right.
I have been very open about my healing since Matt's suicide, because it forced me to get healthy. Like Matt was unhealthy because of his work, and not dealing with his trauma, and it forced and he died. So it forced me to really get deep, dirty, nasty, and go through some ugly, dark, heavy shit. And there still is days, there's still times, and I have children that were extremely close with Matt and were
I know
home
that's
when
really hard.
and they were home when Matt died, and they deal with things on their own terms, and I'm just here to help them. They go to therapy, but because even as a mother, I can't help them through everything, so to speak. I can't tell them how to heal themselves. I can give them the tools. I can drive them to therapy. I can drive them to their dance classes. That is their dance therapy, or, whatever it is. But everybody has to do the hard work themselves. And like you've said, and I'll always reiterate it whenever we talk about it, it is the hardest thing to do. And it is extremely hard to say, I'm not okay, when you're taught to always be okay. When you're taught that you got to be okay. You're the cop, you're the captain, you're the lieutenant, you're the sergeant. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to go, you know what? Right now, I'm fucked up, and I just need to take a step back and go,
And work on this
and work on this.
for a minute.
And then I'll be right back. Like, I will come back and be the employee that you hired me to be. Because the more you're honest, the more humanity you bring in, the more love you bring to yourself, the more love you bring into your family and your children. And then we don't have generations of children that are so, and I don't want to say messed up, but they're living the traumas over and over and over again because of,
How about our kids? Huh? How about them? How about the world they're living in right now?
yeah.
School shootings and like 600 a year or whatever. There's mass shootings. They're watching all this stuff on TV. The dissolution of democracy, all this stuff they're facing. The
And
global
social
warming. They're
media.
really concerned about it.
Yeah.
Freaking social media. Forget all these things, and everything's polarized down to a binary constraint. You are or you aren't. You are or you aren't. Well, that ain't life. Okay, life ain't are or aren't. Life is a complicated mess, and it's beautiful because it is. And I wouldn't want it to be binary. I don't want one or other choices. I'm sorry. There's more than two choices. Just because some algorithm dumped you into those two choices, maybe you should start thinking for yourself and get out. But that's a topic for another day. All
Yeah.
right. That's
That's a
my
whole
philosophy
series in
starting to
itself.
bubble up. Oh, it
However,
is. And it's
we've taught our kids to not process, right? But now on this side of it, and you healing and working through, you're showing our kids that you can process and you can be happy. And it doesn't have to do with what's on social media, or it doesn't have to do with what somebody else has gone through. You don't have to carry it, because you can talk about it to your counselor, to a friend. Your parents are going to be there to support you, like your spouses are there to support you, or your
hopefully.
yeah, yeah, and your significant others, if you're
And for those who
open
feel
and
like they
working on
don't have
yourself.
anybody to support them, those who feel that they're all alone out there, I, your anxiety is lying to you again.
Yes.
Somebody cares about you. Somebody does.
Absolutely.
And you're just avoiding that person or persons. That's all, because your anxiety is lying. Somebody loves you. You are never without love in this world, no matter how rotten you are.
Correct.
Somebody loves you. And if your mom didn't love you, I know moms. There's terrible moms out there. There's terrible dads. Okay, they're out there. Just shitty families.
Yep.
Choose some other family then.
Yeah,
If
they
you
don't have
the
to be
choice.
blood.
Pick another hierarchy to live in. Whatever you need to do to love yourself, find a way to get there. Because I just listen. I loved the men and women I worked with so much. I still love them so much. I know what they go through because I went through it. I also know what they're capable of because I've seen it. I also know that they really want to do the right thing, is my belief overall. I believe that. But I also know they're human. They get misdirected, misguided, misled. They follow the leader. Sometimes the leader ain't leading them down the right path.
Right.
And sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in it. Sometimes you think that it's us and them, and it's not. Ever, ever, ever. It's always us only. And if more people would realize that, there is no them. Okay? There just isn't. But these things you carry in your heart, and it gets more and more complicated, and you feel more and more distracted, alone, lonely, terrified, whatever the feelings are. I'm just going to say that the work is hard, but it's not impossible, obviously. The work is difficult, but it is enlightening. And when I say enlightening, I mean it brings you to another level of understanding, not just of yourself, but of the world around you. It makes you more whole to learn these things. And these things are not mysteries. They're not big mysteries. It just takes time to learn them because they're not, you didn't start learning them until later. And as adult learners, we're kind of weird, right? We have a tough time with language. We have a tough time with all kinds of stuff when we become adults. I mean, maybe we need to start teaching this even younger. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows? The truth is that we can deal with our stresses, man. And the world provides a lot of them. This isn't the world of old. There's information flowing faster than anyone can keep up with, let alone all the AI and everything else that's going on. There's so many things moving so fast. We've grown 6 billion in 100 years. 6 billion people.
Yeah, that's
a lot of
crazy when you
stories.
think about it,
That's a
right?
lot of stories, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of stories, man. You couldn't even hear 1 billion stories in your lifetime, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not good at numbers. We use these big words to describe numbers we can't conceptualize. A billion, we can't figure. We think we know what $1 billion looks like.
Yeah.
Even billionaires don't know what you just can't. Your mind doesn't work that way. Some people do probably. There's probably some genius out there, but most of us have to chop things up into smaller bites,
right,
to understand them.
It's easier to digest.
It is, and so what I would say about mental health is like the same thing. Is you just chop it up into smaller bites when you're dealing with therapy, and then you just try these different things, and eventually, it's like everything else. It layers, just like the trauma layered. Now the learning layers. And when that happens, you start to see it's so crazy how incredibly intuitive it is once you understand how it works. It's something that's innate in us, I think, this ability to self care. We're just not taught it in our culture. That's
Right.
all.
Yeah. Nope.
All right. We're taught something else. It's about what you have, not who you are. It's about what you have. And see, that none of that matters. You can't take any of that shit with you.
Nope.
So, try to be more kind to yourself, I guess, and know that your anxiety is lying to you. And I appreciate what you guys are doing. I hope you stop one person for at least 1 second to think for a minute that maybe their life is more than they realize, and they should stick around because somebody loves them is gonna suffer in a way. I imagine that most suicides, if they just for a second could analyze the cause and effect of what they're doing, they don't because they're not in that space.
No.
They haven't done any of that work either. So empathy is not strong enough yet, because when you build more and more empathy, then you start realizing that suicide isn't a self act. It's an act to others as well.
Right.
It causes an effect to other people that is so devastating. And I think that it's like, and children of suicide are 25% more likely to kill themselves. So you got to watch your kids now. You got to be careful. Make sure they understand. My kids were devastated when Tom killed himself. And then more and more of my friends did as time went, but that was the first real wake up call that I got. And it wasn't even in the police business.
Right.
He was a musician. Mm-hmm. So when the police started doing it, I was like, what the fuck?
Right.
But it's all the time.
And because you're just like, wait, what? And then you try to shelter your kids from it. Because I know suicide was never spoke about in my home until Matt died. And now it's like always on the table, like always, always, always. Like, let's talk, because what do you need? That is never an option. It should never be an option. But like you said,
it is always an option.
Well, it's always an option, but like it's always to everybody, it's always an option, but it should never be an option. It should
not in the way it's wielded. I mean, because you're gonna get. Listen, I probably was supposed to be a lawyer in another life, because I always argue both sides, because I try to understand the whole picture from different angles.
Right.
And I know that, look, euthanasia, I understand it. I understand if somebody's terminally ill and they want to end it their own way. I get it. And someone might argue, well, mental illness is the same thing. I'm like, no, it isn't. No, it is not. Because you can cure mental illness.
Yes.
Some of the stuff that kills people, we can't cure yet. But we've come a long way. People are living way longer than they ever did. Maybe there's a chance we'll beat death one day. Who knows? But that's too scary to think about, having to live forever. I couldn't even imagine how old.
I don't want
to. Yeah, right.
I'm okay.
They can wipe you clean every 100 years, wipe your mind clean, and then you're like starting over.
Yeah.
That might not be too bad. I don't know. But there's a reason why when people write of hell, the ancient poets, and they talk about the Greek mythology, the river Lethe, The idea that you go somewhere and you drink this water and you forget everything from your previous life. And that's a gift, right? It's
Yeah.
not a gift when you're living, because then that's Alzheimer's. You know, that's dementia. That's losing your memory is a terrible thing. But truthfully, if you want to get rid of pain, you wipe yourself clean, you're not going to have any, right? So I think there's so many nuances to this. And what I would say to people is, once again, just know your anxiety is lying to you, that you could fix this stuff, that you can get these tools, and I promise you it will help, even though it may not help right away, because it takes a little time to get it sunk in. But even if a dumb cop like me can do it, a dumb cop like me can do it, and I know someone else can too. And that's my belief. And I think that if you just try these things out, you figure out that, hey, there's somebody that cares about you so much you never want to take yourself away from them. I know Matt didn't want to take himself away from you or his kids or anybody else. I know that he didn't, but he just didn't know what to do. I'm sure, obviously.
Yep.
He ran out of movement. He ran out of wiggle room.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? In his mind.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I know, and he knows what the catalyst is. I mean, don't make yourself crazy thinking about it, because it's probably not any one thing. It's probably all of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's decades of catalysts
Exactly.
that just were
I
piled
still
on top.
think of shit sometimes. I will literally be sitting there and something will trigger a memory from my job. And I'll be like, holy shit, I forgot about that. And it'll be some heavy duty stuff, but it's still seared in there because it was traumatic. Then, now that I've opened myself up to doing it and opening what's called neural pathways, you have memories that are formed by these neural pathways. And I'm not going to get into all the science of it, but what people don't know is you can change those pathways. So if you have a memory of something painful, you can actually create an exit ramp from it into another memory. You can go back and fix it. You can go back and dial it in. You can go back and understand it. And you can go back with wisdom, especially when it's from your childhood. So
I need some yellow brick roads built for me.
Yellow brick roads are great, right? You know,
Yeah.
instead of this trash strewn alley I've been walking down.
Right.
That's typically
Right.
my path, right?
Yeah.
And I would tell, and if I give one more thing, I know we're running out of time, but I tell you, try to walk the earth a little bit. Try to get outside and walk the earth a little bit. You don't have to do a lot of it. I know it sounds like a crazy thing, but walking helped save me too. Not just the therapy, but walking, being outside, recognizing being alive as its own separate thing, and saying, I am alive and I'm on this planet, and it's pretty amazing.
Yes.
And just to add a little to that, that was one of my biggest things when Matt died, my therapist made me do, is to stop, do a movement and to stop and really think. And I'm blanking on what it's called, but like if I was like walking in the pool, because he died in June, so I spent a lot of time in the pool, but she'd tell me, when you're walking in that pool, feel the water in your fingers, feel the water in your toes. She's like, and you literally will change your mindset. And I know that now. I still have to do it, not daily, on bad stretches, absolutely daily. Like, okay, I can feel this muscle, I can feel this, I can feel the wind, I do. But you don't, until you actually do it, then you stop and you go, holy shit, that worked. Okay.
It's a way of grounding yourself.
Yes.
100%. And there's enough philosophy out there to support it. There's enough science to support that meditation works. And see, that's a meditative technique. I use some breathing techniques to get the same thing accomplished. But what you're doing is you're unhitching your mind from your thoughts. Because your thoughts are deconstructive, they're negative oftentimes, especially if you're in that mode, and you just derail it. And when you do change your mind. You can change your mind at any time.
Right.
And people don't realize that either. You can actually learn something new. You can, no matter how old the dog you are, you can learn a new trick.
Yeah.
Even I can. I'm an old fart.
And I think at the end of all of this, any trauma that is in our lives doesn't mean that it defines our happiness or our ability to live life to its best. It's a stepping stone for us to move up to the next level if we utilize it the right way. And people are supporting you, your therapist, your friends, your family. There's somebody out there that's going to help you, but help yourself. Be accountable, do the work. You go and work out, do the mental work as well. It's tough,
and even that,
but it's worth it.
Working out, I would say, like for all the gym jockeys out there that work in this profession, you know that you get to an endorphin state when you work out. You do, and use that state. You can actually use those states differently if you learn the therapy, because now when you're in there, you can do some moving around. You can move the furniture.
Yeah.
You can reset the furniture. You can get rid of the furniture. You put new furniture in. You can change a lot of things when you're in those states. And those are meditative states. And you can achieve them through exercise. You can also achieve them through breathing. You can achieve them through walking. You can achieve them through sitting quietly too. Some people are that good. I have to have distractions to get to mine. I have to do breathing exercises usually. But that unhinging your thoughts is so important, especially with the kind of thoughts and ruminations that we have in this industry.
Yes.
Because we need to disengage from that. We need to pull it away and realize, wait a minute, our anxiety is lying to us. This is not the truth of it. This is just what I'm seeing right now. I am so in it that I can't see the forest for the trees. I cannot see through it to the other side. I'm in it. And it's being able to take yourself out of it for just a minute. And it does, it resets you. You guys are right on the right path. I really am hopeful for your success in getting this message out more. And I'm going to continue to do what I can to help too. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you. And thank you for coming on and sharing your story and putting your words to paper and reading them aloud for others to take in and understand and feel and accept. Because accepting yourself is the first step of being able to move forward.
Absolutely. And it's harder than it seems, but it's not impossible. Is all I'm going to say. Is like, there's no trick to this. It's just hard work, but it's not impossible work. I say this again and again. It's like anything else. It's like learning to tie your shoes. Once you know how to tie your shoes, it's so simple. How did I not figure that out? Well, it's very complicated when you don't know.
Right.
And you don't know how to tie a shoelace. It takes time to figure it out. And now I say, take the time to figure it out. It's worth it. It's worth it as much as it is to be good on the range. And it's worth it as much as to be good in defensive tactics. And it's worth it to be, your physical health and knowing the policies and laws and all that other shit. Start loving yourself. Learn how to love yourself. Learn how to forgive people. Learn how to forgive yourself. Learn. And
Right.
you'll be surprised.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we'll put links on for the poem, The Route, and all your other poems that you may have out there. We'll make sure we have access for people.
I say that I like The Route because the department also did a brief note for Dallas, which is a pretty good piece that they sent out, they produced. I felt like anytime there was a major tragedy, I would try to help any way I could with poetry. Poetry does help. And it's just my way of helping. It's the best way I know how to help. So
poetry is like music. You feel it as it's being pulled in. You're feeling it and you're understanding it. Yeah,
definitely.
Thank you so much.
You guys are amazing people. Ciara, thank you for thinking of me on this. I'm sorry I had to get my druthers about who, what, where with my little aphasia that I got, but
it's okay.
I always say that. I have my little memory issues, but overall, I appreciate your kindness and thinking of me, and I'm honored that you have me on. And I hope that we prevent more of these painful things from happening if we can. At least give people some other options to think about.
Starting the conversations like these, we've already made changes and saved some people's lives. So we are continuing. It won't save everybody. That's foolish for us to think. Right. However, we are saving lives, and you showing your strength and vulnerability is helping others as well.
Yes.
Well, let me leave you with a quote from Maya Angelou. I'm sorry, Ciara, go ahead.
I just said absolutely. And thank you.
My quote from Maya is it's almost cliche to this point, but it still holds true. When you know better, you do better. That's it.
Correct. Absolutely.
So know better and do better. Now you know, do it.
Do it. We are excited to be able to start our day with Badge Brew Coffee. Hey Robin, did you know that Badge Brew has a new charitable badge collab roast?
Hey Christy, I thought I heard that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's called First Response Roast, with a spicy, smooth, medium roast with flavor notes of spice cake and citrus undertone.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And if that doesn't tempt our audience, a portion of the proceeds go to First Help. Oh, and don't forget, they're first responder family owned. Whether you're on day shift, night shift, or the shift of raising your family, Badge Brew has your coffee ready and waiting.
So let me ask you, what's your badge of honor? Find out by going to badgebrewcoffee.com and order yours. If you want the First Response Roast, click on Charitable Badge Collab. I know I am.